it comes out. If that's what, I wake up in the middle of the night saying this is, and having this sort of emotional drive that I have to go make this thing, and they come out the same, then that's fine. But my mentality doesn't work that way.
No.
But I don't know what, I know that there's, hopefully now my work is going to be more, what I'm doing is becoming more recognizable. However, because I lived in Santa Fe for 11 years, and my career path kind of went in a direction where my work really wasn't shown anywhere but Santa Fe, and occasionally in Dallas, but I didn't, I have been without a New York gallery now since 2008 or something, for the first time in my career. That's that period of time, or even exhibiting in Europe or anywhere else. They didn't know that about my work in Dallas. So now it's something that they're just learning about, and it will become recognizable, I think, at some point. And hopefully, will continue in this direction. But,
sure.
That's something that I guess has bothered me. There was, at one time, I used to show at the gallery PPOW in New York, and they were doing an art fair. And I just happened to be there. I think it was in Santa Fe, actually, before we lived there. And a collector, a very large national collector, walked in. He had owned some of my work. And he walked into it was actually in a La Posada motel. It's a fancy, upscale motel.
Right.
And the art fair took place there, so the rooms were the gallery spaces, or the booths, so to speak.
Okay.
And he walked in, and we're sitting at, Penny and I are sitting out on this bench. He walks in, and she's going, "Oh my God, it's,"
Right.
And he walks out, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Every time I see your work, it doesn't look like your work, and it does look like your work." And I'm like, okay. And he walks off, and I look at her and go, she goes, that's a good thing. I went, okay.
Yeah.
I was a little taken back, like, I don't know what that means.
Right. But I think that's promising, right? Several episodes back, I sat down with Joseph Havel, and he's had a long and successful career in 3D work, and he also does drawings and different things. And he was like, talking about how he intentionally, whenever he gets to a point where somebody thinks they know what a typical Joseph Havel work looks like, he's like, I'm going to put it on a shelf and do something else because I don't want to be put in a box. Yeah. And I can always come back to it,
Right.
But, I think, I think there's some people that, I don't know, I'm not sure what drives that artist that want. I think some artists are driven to get to a point where they're known for something and they have their cash cow and they can keep.
Yeah, there are those artists, definitely. There's those artists that, I'm going to turn that off. I think at some point, if you are a financially successful artist, in other words, that it is hard for you to just stop and pull back, because there's going to be a period where no one's going to pay attention, unless it's equally as important or valid work as it was before. I mean, I've heard this statement. I don't know where it came from or who said it, but someone said, when a work of mine has become so successful and written about, and everyone loves that piece, the question I ask myself is, what have I done wrong? And I kind of can relate to that at times, because when you work in series, like I did in photographic series, there was always, you never know which piece it's going to be. And you don't really go into it thinking, okay, one of these is going to be the one that everyone loves and the other's filler. One of the, in my case, there would always be one or two pieces that happened to.
Right.
And again, you start disliking that work because it's so easily likable by everyone.
Right.
And especially after you've lost or forgotten the emotion that it took to make it.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't always, that's not true of all works that people find successful, but I don't know. Artists have strange ways of thinking
right.
about their work and how, there we go.
And so, artists are funny people or they wouldn't be artists, right? And so I think, there's probably a fine line between, trying to maintain this certain level of creativity and trying to be authentic versus being self-sabotaging and having to answer your wife's question about why the cash cow is lying in a pool of blood in the driveway, right? And,
well, that's true, but I think artists are some of the most level-headed, sort of solid thinking people I know.
right.
They really are. And maybe because we have a lot of time to mull things over.
Right.
There's a lot of alone time.
Absolutely.
And when a situation, whether it's a national situation or political situation or whatever, you have time to dissect it. Or in that new term, what Jim Kelly was unpack it.
Right.
You can unpack the thing and break it down. And a lot of times, I mean, I've that whatever those things are, they end up being on your work somewhere.
Right.
I've always wondered, is my, like if you read something, go, oh yeah, political work is, what is happening, and I go, I don't think my work is, political at all. Then you see a piece and you go, well, it kind of is. That must have been on my mind when I was,
right.
Thinking about that and making it, just kind of came out. I do think that. And things that I read sort of find their way on there. I mean, I'm making a piece that's all words, so yeah, that definitely happens.
Right.
Have you read or have you started to read God Save Texas?
No.
Lawrence Wright's new book?
No.
It's so good. And again, I'm not like a Texas rah-rah, almost lifelong resident here.
Right.
But it's just so interesting and how it determines, who you are, how you think, things that go on that you didn't know.
Absolutely.
I really grew up in Dallas, so I never felt racism. My house, no one, it wasn't a part of anything, but yet it was always there. And evidently, as I'm reading it, especially in South Texas and, it's really well worth reading.
Sure. So how about we back up and that's a great intro into that. So you are you're a native Texan. You were born and raised in Dallas, right?
Yes.
And so what are we talking about in terms of formative years? Like your 60s,
50s. I was born in 51.
Okay.
So I mean. From then until high school, it was that period of time where, I don't really know what I was like as a kid. I just had a really great time. And again, it's like, it's really sick to think you're envious of someone that had a horrible childhood because they become actors and directors and great artists, but I didn't. I mean, it was all just like fathers freaking know best. I mean, it was, or Leave It to Beaver.
So tell me about your parents. What did they do?
My father was a dentist. My mother was a mother and kind of a socialite of Dallas.
Right.
She was an only child, and she was always, perfectly dressed, and tried to get us to go to debutante things and that, and never did it. My grandparents, he was a furrier in Dallas and helped start like Neiman Marcus Fur Department and other people. My grandmother worked as well. She ran the business and could cook like, oh my God.
Right.
Like when I got in college, I would come home on Sundays and take food back to my roommates. I mean, they would just lose it and want to come home and eat with us.
Right.
My grandmother's cooking. But I had a brother and two sisters. I was the second. I had an older sister and a younger sister and a younger brother.
Uh-huh.
And it was just, very family-like. We ate breakfast. We ate, dinner. During the summer, you just went off all day on your own. We lived by a creek, so, I did that. I went to school, grade school, like, 2 miles away. Traveling was always in a car, usually to New Mexico, Colorado. It's all very, very safe.
Yeah.
There was, there was a neighbor that was homosexual that I was exposed to, but, it didn't, didn't totally freak me out. I didn't really know. I wasn't completely aware. There were like people like the Fawns. Seriously, like it was like the hoods of the neighborhood.
Right.
We were in this real nice neighborhood, and they had like the family that they had the motorcycles and the cigarettes rolled up in their sleeves, and it was it's 50s, 60s existence in Middle America, basically. And Janet Kuttner, the art critic that used to be the Dallas Morning News, who I love, she just produced a book for her, she said for her kids, but I don't know, I have to let you read this because she wrote a little bit of something of all of us that she wrote a lot about, like, that was Janet. There's Searles and Stopberg, Linda Ridgway, Rauschenberg, Pomaro, people she wrote about a lot. You can read that first sentence because it just cracks me up every time.
All right. It says, Nic Nicosia is a brilliant artist, but he's also one weird dude.
Now, the reason how I take that is I'm making this work that feels like it comes from somewhere else, but she knows how I grew up.
Right. It says he comes from a conventional background, but he views the world from the skewed perspective of a voyeur who knows everyone's secrets.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. I gather that from that you were a peeping Tom.
There might have been some of that. No, I don't know. That part, I was really more about the weird dude thing. That's sort of what I wanted to reference because I have never heard that before. I appreciate that Janet said that because knowing how I grew up, she knew my parents because we met when she started, writing about my work and coming to my openings and all that. My parents came to all of those when I was with, first Laura Carpenter Gallery, then where'd it go from there? I guess I showed with Barry Whistler, and then when Gerald Peters had a Dallas gallery, and then Tally Dunn, Lisa Brown started Dunn and Brown, and then after that it went to Tally Dunn for a while, and then now with Erin Cluley. But she followed the career and knew my background, so I take that weird dude thing and so like, how's this guy making this work when he grew up this way? So I had a very conventional.
So what do you think? What do you think caused your personality to fracture?
I think it's just freedom of to be able to have a freedom of imagination.
Right.
I always had an imagination, I guess. I'm not sure if my work is imaginative. I think now my work really comes